Here in the Astrium plant in Germany, 3 identical satellites are being put through their paces. They'll be launched next year in a bid to provide the most detailed ever survey of the state of the Earth's magnetic field. The satellites are being launched as part of the European Space Agency's SWARM mission. The 3 craft will be put into different polar orbits of between 400 and 550 kilometers altitude. High-precision measurements of the strength and direction of the magnetic field will be given by each, and in combination they should provide enough information to create various models of what's happening. But why is it important to study the Earth's magnetic field? What if our compasses pointed south one day? It seems far-fetched, but that is exactly what happened on Earth some 780,000 years ago, a total reversal of the magnetic poles. On average, these reversals occur every 500,000 years or so. No one knows if this is happening now, but one component of the Earth's magnetic field has decayed by 10% over the past 150 years, and the process appears to be speeding up.
There's an observation that by 15 meters per day, the North Pole is moving towards Siberia. This makes 50 kilometers per year. And I think this is quite a significant number, and it underlines that there's really something happening with this Earth's magnetic field, which needs to be observed.
Most of the field is probably produced by a self-sustaining dynamo in the Earth's fluid outer core. This natural generator is losing power, and the magnetic field in South America and the South Atlantic has decreased by 12% in 30 years.
The tilt of the Earth was 23.4 degrees, and when it is summer in Europe and North America, the distance to the Sun was over 94.2 million miles, tilted towards the Sun. But now the North Pole is in England, on the south coast at Herne Bay. If the tilt is the same angle, 23.4, then the heat from the Sun come January, when the distance is reduced to 92 million miles, then North America, China, parts of India and Europe will face unbearable heat and loss, including Russia and, of course, Mongolia and Algeria. This is what it looked like before the tilt. Tilt is caused by two things: crossing the Milky Way galaxy equator into the northern hemisphere, and the return of what some people call NIBIRU. It's a small binary star with several planets, and it is south of the world, near Antarctica, pulling against the magnetic field of the Earth and tilting. As far as the North Star is concerned, it has always been above the Northern Hemisphere, and in ancient times navigators used it to sail back to England. So sailing south, the star became lower in the sky until past Morocco it was on the horizon, and further south it was below the horizon. You can see it, could have seen it from the descending passage of the altar to the Lord, the Great Pyramid. The prophecy here of the pyramid is that when you cannot see it anymore from the descending passage, then that's the end of time. Since June the 5th, 2013, a new axis of the Earth has settled down over Herne Bay in England. So the problem the Earth faces is prophecy. Can't be altered. Now the world rejects the Lord, Psalms 118:22, in his second coming, as a result. Even though the Pope Benedict XVI has written and announced that he has met Jesus, spoke to Jesus, and wrote an apostolic letter, which is very important for the Christian world, because 1.2 billion of Christians are Catholic. But because he did that, Joseph of Arimathea would turn over in his grave, seeing that he is now a prisoner in the Vatican. Thanks to Francis, the new Pope, and all the cardinals. 99% of the Vatican is evil. So maybe you get 5 or 6 good men in there and that's it. The rest are Lucifer worshipping demons. So there's the location in Herne Bay. There it is from space. So what the world order does not do ever is tell you the truth, and I always tell you the truth. So on December the 11th, 2011, at 11:11 a.m. Eastern Australia, solar system travelling at 69,000 kilometres per hour at a 63-degree angle across the equatorial line of the Milky Way galaxy. Here the message is 69 is Jehovah, it's also Leonard, and 63 is Isaiah 63. The galaxy is 100,000 light years wide, so it's a mathematical perfection. 1 times pi is pi. Therefore, 100,000 light years is 314,153, off to infinity, that's a never-ending number, and is pi. Now, we had cameras set up watching the moon, and at 11:11 it started to flip, and 1 hour later it was completely upside down at 180 degrees, and then it finally settled down and came back upright, and it's been wobbling back and forth ever since. The Coriolis effect is one of the things that is not spoken about either in the news. If you drain water down your tap and you're living in North America or Europe, you'll find it's now going counterclockwise, where it was going clockwise. In Australia, it is reversed. The Earth itself wobbling was prevented by Antarctica. It is like a giant damper. They use dampers like this as weights hanging in buildings, high-rise buildings, for resisting movement during an earthquake. Now, Antarctica is a ring of mountains enclosing a vast area. The total area is 5.5 million square miles. It's as large as the continental United States and Australia combined. It is ice and floats in the ocean, pressing down the ocean floor. It's like a giant ship, as all nations are. They sit on the magma. The magma is where it gets cooler towards the base of these nations. It becomes a shell and solidified rock. As said, the distance to the sun determines the weather. It's important to understand that the angle of the axis of the Earth is what keeps the temperatures at a life-giving level. Since we now tipped over, New Zealand's got a lot of trouble. North America isn't a lot of trouble. Water draining has reversed, as said. Satellite images of the clouds forming will demonstrate the new Earth equator. I haven't done that yet because we are constantly being knocked off the internet. Very, very likely that we won't be able to get on the internet again until we work out another way of doing it. They've stopped our mail, they've stopped our cell phones, and of course internet in the matter where we go, they soon track us down and turn it off. So the world order has been building underground tunnels for 60 years since the end of World War II, and they know because even the Vatican has a telescope called Lucifer in the United States. Now, the threat of nuclear war is a diversion. All magicians draw attention away from what the left hand is doing, as it does further actions of the right. So, keep the masses confused like sheep. Top drawing is what the normal orbit of the Earth is around the Sun. You see how when it gets close to 92 million miles in January, 46 years in maximum, Europe was tilted away. Now it's tilted towards the Sun at 92 million miles. So come January, Europe is in another category. With the new North Pole in South England, the access through to the South Pole is near New Zealand and will be extremely cold. Personally, New Zealand will not be missed. That is the most vile nation with every form of satanic practices imaginable. In the Talmud, the ancient Babylonian mystery, which has caused the Judaism practicing Jews to be kicked out of 80 countries for drinking children's blood. The blood contains the soul, and as they don't have a soul, they are drinking the blood of children as the purest Christians, having the soul, and believe that they can be sustained by the sacrificing of children. Pathetic and sad as it is, they do have a soul, and it is going to the bottom. When they talk about doing evil in the Talmud, they say go to another city. Well, in this case, they go to another nation. Fiji and New Zealand are washed with every abomination. So if this was brought to the surface, where does it been carried out? A bit like there's numerous service stations in the cities. It's all over the place. Every synagogue is a place of sacrifice. They'll be all totally destroyed. New Zealand is 888 miles between north and south latitude. Therefore, it's a very, very chosen place for the sacrificing of children that have been a complete abomination, because they're saying that we can do this right in the area of the earth which is more Christian churches than anywhere else in the world per capita. And what's Jesus doing about it? Nothing. Well, we'll see about that. Our biggest enemy is humankind. None will help him, apart from a handful of saints. Now, New Zealand is almost in the Antarctic situation with short daylight hours, very cold in the northern hemisphere. So they will be completely wiped out unless there's a change in the Earth's attitude towards itself. That's what it looks like. The new equator running around the centre through South America. And on that point there where it's going through, there's where the Christ statue is in Rio. Australia will be protected and temperatures will drop and have done so far, but much, much further. Tasmania, Melbourne, Adelaide, very, very cold. Sydney is further north than Perth, will be livable but very cold and dirty. The further north you go, the warmer it will be compared to the south, the new south. Australia has been reporting temperatures have dropped dramatically for winter, which is in June, July, indicating the tilt is towards the sun. Bad news for the northern hemisphere when closest in January. So the pole star is now gone. January the 24th is your problem. My calculations see the axis passes through Stonehenge, it's slowly creeping towards it, which is 200 2127 number is there, and it was also Ezekiel 21:27. Now, if you was to invite people into your home, and across the road was a nice family, kiddies would be able to come over and become friends, have Christmases together and Easter, and look after each other's children, run them to school. However, if there was child molesters and homosexuals on either side of you, they would not be coming into your house, would they? Well, this house I'm talking about is the earth and it's mine. And that is why there will be no homosexuals, there will be no Judaism, there will be no child molesters, there will be nothing that offends. Nothing, absolutely. Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed because of the same abominations. In fact, former bastion of Christianity, Germany, has passed laws that parents, so that little children, that parents should masturbate their children. The National Party in 2009 passed laws saying that this is what's got to be done. And the children, it's hard to believe that this is true. Children are handed booklets to take home from kindergarten, showing the parents that they must masturbate their children. The idea is to develop a child's sexuality. Now, it's also, they're passing laws for child pornography is going to be made legal. Now, to counter all this, I drove through it and looked at it with my wife. And it stuns me, it stuns us both. What these former bastions of Christian nation are now forced to endure because of the Holocaust of life. All laws. Amazing. So with the return of a binary system, a smaller sun and planets, it has approached the solar system from the south and has been photographed by our team, shifting the position of Antarctica, which I pointed out in several videos, by rotating it up to 90 degrees, acting like a damper, stopping the Earth from a complete flip upside down. So this is a normal view. It looks like a baby's head, but it is basically circular, and it's like a big round ship that can easily rotate. And that's what it did. So the new poles are temporary, but it will take months to recover. But during that time, people, evil men and women, will be begging to die because they'll be so tormented by what they're going to endure. In Australia, as of June, they're reporting animals, temperatures, all sorts of strange things. So the white line here is the north-south axis now, and the left-right is the equator, new equator. So along the equator, it's going to be reasonably comfortable for people to live. It'll be very cold in New Zealand. It all can be stopped, of course. Just one way to do it, and that's to recognise that God is back and not going to take any more of this crap. Now, while I was travelling through Europe, we found that there were two light sources. One light source, you can't see it. It's below the spectrum of the eye, but when it bounces off the moon or vehicles and so forth, it does leave a shadow because the spectrum changes light. So we had many occasions where we've seen a shadow on either side of the vehicles because the light was coming from two directions. So, Scripture. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months, and their torment was as the torment of a scorpion, when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. Revelation 9, 4, 5 and 6. If you take July through to 5 months, it's going to get worse and worse and worse up until Christmas. And then January. Matthew 24:29 states, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken." Now, what can happen here is that the new binary can move in front of the sun. You won't have any need for the sun. It's also a prophecy, because the light of God will be there. So the light of God in this case will be coming from the new binary in front of the sun. The brightness of the two light sources at this time, June the 17th, 2013, this is written a few days ago, is so bright that there are no stars, and at this there is countless millions of chemtrails. So over the entire Earth, this is an amazing feat of engineering when you consider what they're doing. All the planes they've had to set up, it takes years to do it, and to develop the chemicals. It's extraordinary. So they're trying to stop people looking up seeing the stars, but unfortunately there's communication with the internet, and we have people who do see the sky and do report to us what is supposed to be there isn't. So as the new axis is Herne Bay, England, its latitude at 51, 52, 9, 4, 9, around 51 degrees 53. We have set the computer over our location in Rome. So the distance the axis shift has moved is the same approximately, 52 degrees, so around 12 to 13 degrees south latitude. So all around the world is shifted. So what we do is we set the computer up to what it should be looking at. So if we go down to Angola or a country like it, by the shift of 52 degrees, we then see what is there and what we'll be looking at if you're in Angola. You'll see Virgo, Virgin and Saturn. And now we have the moon at an altitude of 66.07. Never happened before in history, but now it is. Last night the sky was clear, the moon was clearly seen. No Saturn or Virgin, where it was supposed to be one moon width away from Saturn. So this confirms the shift. As I said, we set our computer for Angola. The astronomy program is not connected to the internet and cannot be altered and proves the shift. Now there are programs that are available on the internet. Stellarium is one. And of course it is showing events normal. It is supposed to be live feed. So measuring the moon where it should be at altitude 36.25, and where it actually is 64.98, is a shift of 28.73. That number in Hebrew is to kill, slaughter, animals or men. Now I calculated the Earth tilt at not at 23.4, but a shift to 17.18 degrees. Decrease of 6.22. Now I mentioned this 622 number. We have seen it hundreds of times come up in the calculations we do. So therefore, it is confirmed in that sense that I am correct in my calculation. It means to destroy fully, die, loss, mar, perish. And 51.23 degrees off normal tilt plus the 6.22 is 57.45. This takes us to Ezekiel because the number overturn in Ezekiel. And this is the 2127, which is people who have been watching us are aware that this is a very key number. It's the age difference between two of my daughters. For example, 2.127 years. It's in 1 Chronicles 5:13. My stepdaughter and my youngest daughter, and the numbers stretch out from there to amazing consistency. And that means to overturn. And the earth is the furnace, literally. The name Ezekiel in the Hebrew is 3168. And of course in Greek, most of you are familiar with my work. You know this to be Lord, 800, Jesus 888, and Christ 1488. And the Pope will be 31680 days old on my birthday, on January 11th, 2014. Now, as odd as all this is, we are dealing with creation. Universities have been dominated by Zionism for decades, years, centuries. depending on what country. And of course, all behind that is Judaism. So the smaller sun is giving off light, but we can't see it. But what happens is that the animals can see it. So reports from Australia, all farm animals are trying to get out of the farm. Feral goats are everywhere. Outdoor cats want to get into their own homes. Temperatures are reported at -1 degree Celsius on the news, but they are in fact -11 Celsius, which is 20 degrees different. Fahrenheit. As usual, the media is not telling the truth. They never do. So July, the distance to the sun at 94.2 million miles, right at 92 million miles, and January 94.2 million. We move towards the sun, and the new pole is almost directly pointing at the sun. January is certain death. Yet prophecy tells us only the evil will suffer. Repentance will end it. Even the earth will right itself, for every knee shall bow, and they have to do that first. Then the earth will settle down. Paradise situation. It is also the Daniel furnace prophecy, Daniel, son of man, Jesus. So the mention of son of man in Daniel is referring to son of man, Jesus. Daniel 3:16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to King Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer these in this matter. Chapter 17. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he would deliver us out of thine hand, O King. He answered and said, lo, I see 4 men loose. But he throws them into a furnace, right? Heats it to 7 times the temperature of the furnace is normal operating temperature. And in the midst of the fire, they have no hurt because they are with the Son of God. And who is the Son of God? Jesus. And who is Jesus? Yahweh. And who is Yahweh? Me, I am. Who is Brian Marshall?
If the Earth's actual axis changes, which is connected to massive pole shifting, you're talking cataclysm. I mean, you know, you're talking biblical Armageddon type stuff.
This is Nancy Leader on the Zeta Report. The Zeta state that the pole shift happens within an hour, forcing the Earth's crust to move 90 degrees. This causes hurricane-force winds worldwide and immense sloshing of the oceans. The general guideline is to be 100 miles in from the coastline and 200 feet above sea level. The Zetas have given hundreds of advisements about locations worldwide.
Behold, the Lord maketh the earth empty, and maketh it waste, and turneth it upside down, and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof. Man, I found this thing in the Bible, and it sure sounds like NIBIRU and 2012 and everything else. Earth turning upside down? Bible. Man, if it's in the Bible, it's gotta be true.
Are you ready for the dancing of the poles in 2012? Do you know what's going to happen or why it's going to happen? They say that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and there appears to be plenty of people on YouTube with just a little knowledge. This video is intended to give you a not too in-depth, but hopefully factual look at the issues involved. As always, I urge you to verify everything I state for yourselves. First of all, I shall not be discussing NIBIRU or Planet X. Anyone who is still placing any credence in the loons who perpetuate this invented threat, please see your medical practitioner and suggest that you need an increase in dosage. I will say that any sudden pole shift of any magnitude would be completely catastrophic. Forget running to the hills or burrowing underground. The world as we know it would end. Just imagine some gigantic being grabbing hold of the earth and giving it a good shake. It would be a disaster even a genocidal god would be proud of. But there is absolutely no sign, rhyme or reason whatsoever to think that it's going to happen in any timescale that matters to us. So let us start by looking at the earth. What is going on beneath our feet, and how do we know? Well, luckily, as well as science fiction writers, conspiracy theorists, ufologists, religious nuts, astral planers, and mystics, we have scientists. And unlike the aforementioned, scientists deal with research, facts, the scientific method, and shit. So let us begin. What is the Earth made of? Well, science can tell us directly what the surface of the Earth is made of by analysis of surface material. And materials that were once subterranean but are now on the surface due to tectonic and volcanic action provide further direct evidence, as does drilling and mine work. But all of this still only covers the Earth's crust. If you think of the Earth as an apple, then the Earth's crust would be the apple peel. So how do we know what is below the crust and forms the bulk of the Earth? Well, we have some direct evidence of what is there, and some indirect evidence. The direct evidence comes from seismology and orbital mechanics. the propagation of seismic waves through the Earth provides solid evidence for the density of Earth's structure at any given position and depth. The mass of the Earth can be accurately calculated based on gravitational interactions with other solar system bodies. Indirect evidence comes from other objects in the solar system. The objects within the solar system all formed at roughly the same time. Spectral analysis of the Sun reveals the same chemical fingerprints as that of the Moon and meteorites that have reached Earth, and this provides a high level of confidence as to what the inside of the Earth looks like. Seismology indicates a liquid core with a solid inner core. The gravitational mass indicates that the core is much more dense than the crust. And this is in tune with the idea that during its very early molten phase, heavier elements would have gravitated towards the centre of the mass of the Earth. So the current model is that the inner core is a solid structure, primarily of iron nickel, with a radius of 1,200 kilometres. The outer core is then a 2,300 kilometre thick layer of molten iron and nickel, with a viscosity about 10 times that of liquid metal as we experience it on the surface of the planet. The outer core lies 3,000 kilometres below the Earth's surface. Above the outer core we have the mantle. This is about 3,000 kilometres thick and ranges from quite solid rock through to plastic flowing rock. And above the mantle we have the Earth's crust. The oceanic crust is 5 to 10 kilometres thick, whilst the continental crust is 30 to 50 kilometres thick. The crust comprises a number of tectonic plates which float on the mantle. Although to be accurate, the crust plus the top layer of the mantle is known as the lithosphere, but I want to keep this simple. And there we have a simple description of the Earth. It's far from being a solid body, but is more like a ball filled with material of varying viscosity, affected by internal convection currents which constantly churn its innards, and with a thin crust of plates which move around, crashing into each other and being pulled beneath the surface or thrust into the air. At places, the liquid centre bursts through the crust, and in places new crust is formed by the constant ejection of mantle material. But the Earth is not a stationary object. Let us look at how the Earth moves, and why it moves. First and most obviously to us now, the Earth orbits the Sun. How would you prove that to a primitive tribesman in remote Papua New Guinea, or a Christian? Show them how the movements of the celestial bodies are best explained by a heliocentric solar system. And of course you'd be telling them a lie, because the Earth does not orbit the Sun, though I shall now continue to say it does, as we will all know what that really means. Nothing exists in isolation, and our Sun and Earth are no exception. If we simply consider the Sun-Earth system, then we must remember that they both orbit the centre of mass of that system. It just so happens that the Earth is so piddlingly small in comparison to the Sun that the system's very centre is close to the centre of the Sun. And of course, we have a whole solar system to consider. Now the Sun comprises 99.86% of the total mass of the solar system, and Jupiter accounts for approximately 70% of what's left, or to put it another way, 2.5 times the mass of all the other planets and bodies combined. Little Earth is just 1/300th of Jupiter's mass. Anyway, the point here is that just as the Sun-Earth system has a barycenter, the Sun also has a barycenter with all other objects which orbit it. Jupiter has by far the largest gravitic effect on the Sun, and the Sun-Jupiter barycenter is outside the body of the Sun. This causes the Sun to wobble as Jupiter orbits it. This wobble effect is used by astronomers to locate planets orbiting other stars, find a wobbly star, and decide if the wobble is caused by an orbiting planet. And everything in the solar system has a little tug on the Sun as well, to a greater or lesser extent. We cannot therefore think of the solar system as an orrery of objects all at fixed distances from each other in a perpetual and well-choreographed dance. Rather, all of the objects interact with each other, and they all wander through space as though slightly inebriated. Because of this, the gravitational forces exerted on the Earth by all the bodies in the solar system are constantly changing, and this results in many cyclic variations in the Earth's orbital eccentricity. And cyclic they are. It's an aim to say that any of the cycles have a start or end point. They are continuous, i.e. cyclic. And we're yet to mention the Moon. The Earth and Moon are another two-bodied system, and they orbit a barycenter located about 1,700 kilometres below the Earth's surface. And so the Earth-Moon system dances a drunken waltz as it orbits the common barycenter with the Sun, as the Sun orbits its barycenter with Jupiter, and wobbles flirtingly with all the other planets. Now the Earth rotates on its axis once a day, or 365 times a year, as it orbits the Sun, constantly altering the gravitic effect that the Sun has on its surface. Earth precesses on its axis with a period of about 26,000 years, due to the Sun's unequal pull on the non-spherical Earth. And the Earth's axis is tilted at about 23.4 degrees, which again alters, as it spins, how it interacts with the Sun. The Moon, being so much closer to the Earth than the Sun, has a much greater gravitic tidal effect on the Earth. As the Moon orbits the Earth roughly every 27.3 days sidereal, or 29.5 days synodic, its distance from the Earth varies by about 11%, and so its gravitic tugging on the Earth continually changes, both in strength and location. Whilst this tugging is most evident in the ocean tides, the tidal forces also affect the physical Earth itself. The Moon's orbit is about 5 degrees off the ecliptic, and so the way its gravity adds and subtracts from the Sun is continually changing. And of course anything which alters the distribution of mass within the Earth itself also affects the spin and orbit of the planet. This includes the movement of water in the oceans due to the tides, the changes in air pressure in the atmosphere, the subterranean movements of mass due to thermal currents in the liquid core and molten rock under the mantle, the seismic shocks of earthquakes propagating through the Earth, changing ice sheets, isostatic rebound, hurricanes and meteorological events such as El Niño alter the spin of the Earth in a measurable way. Each and all these things can and do cause the Earth to move slightly on its axis. There are certain periodic wobbles that have been determined and can be calculated to an incredible degree of accuracy, but there are others, influenced by the tides and weather for instance, that cannot be forecast with any degree of accuracy beyond a few weeks or months. And all of these forces have been in play for millions of years, and have resulted in the poles wandering at different periods in Earth's history. Over the past 200 million years, the poles have wandered approximately 30 degrees, with a characteristic rate of 1 degree or less every million years. There are some hypotheses of more rapid movements at different times in Earth's history, but there is a clear consensus that not much has happened since the dinosaurs were strutting their stuff. Of course, anything is possible, and it is a fact that a sudden pole shift would be a catastrophic event. But so would a donkey falling on your head on the way to the bus stop. And I doubt that you spend too much time worrying about that. So anything you have heard or read on the World Wide Web concerning imminent pole shifts is pure fabrication and nonsense. It is also nothing new. No conspiracy theory ever is. And I will deal with that in another video. I also plan to look at the magnetic poles, which I find a much more attractive proposition. So until next time, thanks for watching, and watch out for those donkeys.
Behind your prayers, what do you think? What do you want?
The two different images of the Earth's magnetic field. On the left is a model of a normal situation where you have the lines of force extending out and of both the north and the south pole, and they loop back around and they form what's called our magnetosphere. It's a shield from solar radiation, from outside of our solar system. And we were talking about this galactic plane, and every 13,000 years, which is a half cycle, we go through that center of the universe where there's more gravity, more radiation, things like that. Now, on the right, you see what is a model of what would start occurring during a reversal. In other words, the north and south pole magnetically of the Earth would change. And that's been detected in lava flows and rocks in different techniques. And in Oregon, we talked about that in one mountain there on an extinct volcano, they tested the lava, and it had hardened in that day. And it had hardened during an extreme shift. So there was a volcano going on during that shift, but they measured a 6-degree tilt of the Earth in one day. Now, scientists around the world now are starting to notice that it's starting to change. And of all the times to where we don't need our shields down, we're going right through this 13,000-year half cycle of this galactic plane. Now, back this summer, we have a satellite called GRACE that orbits the Earth. It measures the gravity field. You can see this July 2013, guys. And we're getting more, and it does this in the summer more. But this year, we're starting to get extreme gravity pulling at the equator. Now, you see the red line? That's over the northern part of South America, just below. You see Central America there, Cuba coming out there. That's right over that area, and they're saying it's due to a magma flow. Now, magma contains iron, which controls these magnetic lines of force. You understand what I'm saying? Now, for some reason, we're getting extreme gravity there, a peak, and that's because of that. Now, notice how at the north and south you have your normal gravity peaks where your lines of force come out, but it seems that the North Pole is a lot stronger than the South Pole at this point. So, one thing to remember is that they're saying that even though the lava can be shifting, it's not directly connected to the Earth's crust, so it may not be an immediate tectonic effect as far as earthquakes and things like that. But it depends on the extremity of the shift and the time it takes. But again, one of the things they worry about is our magnetosphere, and that would be an extreme radiation event for everyone on Earth. Grids, humans, plants. AM till 2 p.m. Central Time. We're going to talk about this and some of this chemicals in the space dust, some of the sinkholes. Join us there. I'll put a link. Heads up.
Here in the Astrium plant in Germany, 3 identical satellites are being put through their paces. They'll be launched next year in a bid to provide the most detailed ever survey of the state of the Earth's magnetic field. The satellites are being launched as part of the European Space Agency's SWARM mission. The three craft will be put into different polar orbits of between 400 and 550 kilometers altitude. High precision measurements of the strength and direction of the magnetic field will be given by each, and in combination they should provide enough information to create various models of what's happening. But why is it important to study the Earth's magnetic field? What if our compasses pointed south one day? It seems far-fetched, but that is exactly what happened on Earth some 780,000 years ago, a total reversal of the magnetic poles. On average, these reversals occur every 500,000 years or so. No one knows if this is happening now, but one component of the Earth's magnetic field has decayed by 10% over the past 150 years, and the process appears to be speeding up.
There's an observation that by 15 meters per day, the North Pole is moving towards Siberia. This makes 50 kilometers per year. And I think this is quite a significant number, and it underlines that there's really something happening with this Earth's magnetic field, which needs to be observed.
Most of the field is probably produced by a self-sustaining dynamo in the Earth's fluid outer core. This natural generator is losing power, and the magnetic field in South America and the South Atlantic has decreased by 12% in 30 years.
The tilt of the Earth was 23.4 degrees, and when it is summer in Europe and North America, the distance to the Sun was over 94.2 million miles, tilted towards the Sun. But now the North Pole is in England, on the south coast at Herne Bay. If the tilt is the same angle, 23.4, then the heat from the Sun come January, when the distance is reduced to 92 million miles, then North America, China, parts of India and Europe will face unbearable heat and loss, including Russia and, of course, Mongolia and those areas. This is what it looked like before the tilt. Tilt is caused by two things: crossing the Milky Way galaxy equator into the northern hemisphere, and the return of what some people call NIBIRU. It's a small binary star with several planets, and it is south of the world, near Antarctica, pulling against the magnetic field of the Earth and tilting. As far as the North Star is concerned, it has always been above the northern hemisphere, and in ancient times navigators used it to sail back to England. So sailing south, the star became lower in the sky until past Morocco it was on the horizon, and further south it was below the horizon. You can see it, could have seen it from the descending passage of the altar to the Lord, the Great Pyramid. The prophecy here of the pyramid is that when you can't see it anymore from the descending passage, then that's the end of time.